welcome to Reading with Jan and Robin. We are so excited for our second book club, and we're so excited to have Chris Herren here with us today. Just for a little background for those of you who are just tuning in for the first time, Jan and I met, gosh, how many years ago? 18 years ago on the tennis court, and I had just lost some weight, and people were telling me I looked good, and she just was asking me about it. I said, well, I just got in AA. And she said, well, I have, my own issues. And we became great friends. And fast forward it, during COVID, people have been struggling with meetings, not being able to go in person to AA meetings, and isolated. And we just thought, let's do a book club where people can have something to do, read a book, and then can join us and have some fellowship and conversations about addiction and recovery, and that's how we got here.
Yes. So the first book we did was with Laura Baugh, and we partnered with Reading
with Recovery Resource. They were our sponsor.
Yes. And so we are really excited, since we have worked with Chris Herren in the past. We were so excited to reach out to Chris and say, is there any way you would join us for this? And Chris, he's pretty good-natured. He's a pretty good-natured person, and he said that he would do this. Do you have any? Can you remember when we first met, Chris?
Yeah, Chris was the speaker. There's a luncheon Recovery Resource does in Fort Worth called Stars in Recovery, and it's named after my father, Jim Bradshaw. And Chris was the speaker in 2014. And Jan and I heard him, and it was a packed house, and you could hear a pin drop. I mean, we were on the edge of our seats, loved him. We since brought him back to Dallas to speak to several other recovery groups. And my favorite story I have to jump in and share is Jan offered to take Chris to the airport. And he is going to be on the Today Show the next day. And Jan is taking him and drops him off at the wrong airport. I think she dropped him off at DFW, and he was going out of left field to New York. I mean, I didn't even know they had flights to New York back then.
But let me just step in, and we will ask Chris about this when he comes on. He flew in the night before from Love Field, and it took him 5 minutes to get to the hotel. And so when I took him to Dallas-Fort Worth, wouldn't you think 45 minutes later, if you're not at the airport, you would think, I wonder if I told her the wrong airport. Anyway, I think this is a great way to welcome Chris, but I'm going to first introduce Chris and tell you a little bit about the book, and then we'll ask him about this. But Chris was a celebrated basketball star at Durfee High School in Fall River, and he went on to play at Boston College and Fresno State. He played 2 seasons in the NBA, including with his hometown, the Boston Celtics, and 7 years overseas before losing everything to the disease of addiction. With the help of family and the support of others in recovery, Heron worked his way to sobriety in 2008, one day at a time, and has stayed there ever since. His recovery journey has been documented in the best-selling memoir, Basketball Junkie, the Emmy-nominated ESPN Films documentary, Unguarded, and most recently, The First Day. Since 2009, Chris has spoken to over 1 million students and community members, giving hundreds of presentations to students, community groups, and corporations, each year sparking honest discussions about substance use and wellness. In 2011, he established Heron Project, a nonprofit foundation that provides prevention programs for schools, scholarships for treatment and recovery housing, as well as coaching and online support for families. Most recently, he founded Heron Wellness, a residential health and wellness program that helps guests lead healthy, substance-free lives, with locations in Seekonk, Maine, and Warrington, Virginia, with a focus on holistic therapies, including HBOT. His inspirational message and organizations have helped thousands of people. Chris, we welcome you to our show.
I'm so happy to be on this with you tonight. This has been quite a journey. I remember that breakfast. I met some amazing people. a man by the name of Gary Weber,
Yes.
who I've stayed in touch with over the years. And, you know, to meet Clayton and his wife,
Kershaw.
yeah, that morning at the breakfast. And, you know,
World Series champion.
that's right. Well deserved.
Yes.
And, you know, I was so happy to see him to get that. You know, it's been a long road for him, and he's one of the best ever.
Yes.
And to walk away from the game eventually as a world champion, it was well deserved. But, you know, that breakfast was special, and I just met some great people there. So to be on this show years later, and, you know, it's an honor. But I appreciate your effort, an attempt at passing the buck on the airport thing. I believe I asked you multiple times, are we going to the right place? And you were adamant that we were going in the right direction. And you actually got lost a couple of times just going to that airport, if I remember correctly.
Okay, you know what? Maybe we'll save this discussion for another time. Let's just say that it was not as funny to me as it was to you. And it left me with that sick feeling. And you kept saying, you know, what's your problem? I'm like, I'm sick to my stomach. But you made it. You were on the Today Show the next day. And so
Yes.
you're
it all worked
welcome.
out.
You're welcome. I'll be happy to pick you up next time. So we are going to just ask you some questions today and visit with you. We loved your book, and so Robin and I are going to take turns asking you some questions, and you tell us whatever, you know, comes to mind. We want to hear what we and how we can help you in your endeavors. So Robin, what's your first question for Chris?
Well, I want to say, you know, my father was a recovering alcoholic. When he passed away, he had 25 years. And I remember my mom saying he had his first drink when he was 14 years old, and he got really sick. And he spent the next 30 years trying to drink successfully and never did. And I read you had your first drink when you were a freshman in high school, and you were a basketball superstar smoking pot. And a question we just never ask is why? Why do you think you were drinking and doing drugs?
You know, I think that's a question that's oftentimes, I think parents are afraid to ask it, first and foremost. You know, I think when kids, you know, when parents realize that their kids are engaged in drinking or drugs, the focus tends to be more on with who, where, and how much rather than why. I think if you asked me when I was 13, 14 years old, why, I probably would have dodged the question because I wasn't equipped with the right tools to answer it. You know, alcoholism is in my family. It's generational. My parents were going through a divorce or starting the process of getting divorced. You know, as a young teenager, I felt that. I felt that my father's drinking was impacting not only my mom, but our household. You know, also being a successful athlete at that age, you know, and the pressure that came along with it at 14. I wasn't equipped to process it. I almost wanted to run away from it. And, you know, sadly, there was also this sense of, I just want to be normal. I want to be like the rest of my friends. You know, and that's the scariest thing about addiction. Nobody knows who's going to suffer from it.
Yes.
You know, nobody knows what life is going to look like, you know, in 15 years around alcoholism or substance use. And none of us did, but many of us suffered because of the decisions that we made in our early teenage years.
Well, and I think a misconception is a lot of parents think, oh, it's peer pressure. They want to be cool. They want to have fun. They're out partying. when a lot of times it's just self-medicating. It's just
Yes.
numbing, or the the take away the pain.
Yes.
Absolutely. I mean, and a lot of parents, I think we gauge our children. A lot of us gauge our children on paper, right? It's like, well, they're doing well in school, they have a good friend group, or they're successful socially or in a sport. But I think there's a lot of parents out there that rarely ask how their kids' self-esteem,
Yes.
where that's at, or their self-worth. It's checking in emotionally. And I think oftentimes that's overlooked.
Yes.
I think we and parents tend to hope that our children are okay, hope they're going to be. I hear that all the time from parents. I just sit back and I just hope they're okay, rather than diving into it and figuring out why, or just checking in to see if they're okay.
And looking in, like, to the outside world, you were the kid who had everything. You were the basketball superstar. You were heavily recruited for the biggest and best basketball programs. And so I think that's why, Robin was saying, what made you turn to alcohol and drugs? Because it did look like you had the perfect life.
Well, I mean, again, on paper, statistically, I had a phenomenal life,
Yes.
right? I was scoring all these points and I had all this attention and I was playing in front of all these people. But sadly, I could score 40 points in front of 4,000 people, but I couldn't hang out with 14 of my best friends without being intoxicated. And to me, that speaks volumes. And I think, on a national level, I think we've done such a horrible job at promoting social well-being, and we've almost surrendered to the fact that kids are going to get drunk on Friday nights, and kids are going to experiment at 15 years old, and to me, that's sad, and it's sad when I look back on my life. The kids I hung out with, I had known since kindergarten, and yet I still struggled with them socially, and didn't feel comfortable amongst them. So on paper, yes, life was great. But behind closed doors, as I stated, my parents were struggling. My dad's alcoholism was having an impact. I was 14 years old. My brother, who, was my big brother, just went off to college. I am now at home with two parents who are kind of trying to figure out their next chapter in life, whether it's together or by themselves. And, and through all that, I was juggling this immense amount of pressure to succeed, and be the guy. Some are able to manage it, I mean, Highland Park, and I've been there, they've had multiple star athletes come out of there. And, they've played in front of the same amount of people I played in front of. To me, genetically, I was predisposed to this illness. I grew up around it. And I also had other factors that played in throughout my childhood and my teenage years.
Well, let's fast forward it to when you were a freshman at Boston College and you were first introduced to cocaine. And, I know in college there's recreational drugs going on, and a lot of people kind of, dabble in it and then mature and go on. But you were hooked the first time you tried it. And I think I read you spent the next so many years chasing that high from the first cocaine hit. Can you explain what changed when you tried that? What in your brain you think happened?
I think there's language around this that plays into people's suffering. And I think, in my opinion, and especially what I do today, there is no such thing as a recreational cocaine user. Cocaine today is cut with multiple substances, fentanyl being one of them. anybody who's snorting cocaine is possibly taking a chance at dying. And kids need to understand that that's not recreational. What cocaine did for me, and I think, your viewers, anyone who has ever suffered from this, cocaine gave me the ability to be vulnerable, to express myself, to sit in a room amongst people and talk about some of my fears. And it breaks down those walls. And I found myself at 4:00 in the morning, in deep conversations, and oftentimes woke up at 2:00 the next afternoon regretting the conversation I had. But it opened a communication line for me that I had always kept, inside of me. And obviously it was something that one night, and I'll never forget it. I walked into that dorm room, and I had a fear of cocaine. I looked at it and I was like, oh gosh, I want nothing to do with this. But my insecurities came out of me, and some of the decisions I made leading up to that, where nothing happened, allowed me to test the water. And honest to God, I promised myself I was going to try that drug one time. And, ultimately it took 14 years to walk away from it. It shows you the impact one decision can make on one's life. And that was one of the decisions, amongst many, to be quite frank, that impacted me for over a decade.
I know, and I've been in AA meetings where people will say, I just want to be able to do cocaine socially. I was just trying to, and I know when I first went in, I just wanted to kind of give my liver a rest. I was just going to be there 30 days, and 18 years later,
Yeah.
still there.
Cocaine's a tricky drug. It's not like opiates where you become dependent on it daily, or you cannot function. Cocaine, and I have many friends and many people who I've seen come through my wellness center, that they go out for a weekend once every 6 weeks or once every 8 weeks, and that weekend lasts 72 hours. And then you get 3 days rest, and you start to feel better, and you start to get back to life. And then all of a sudden, you're back in that same cycle again. So because oftentimes it's not a daily used drug, it can be tricky to navigate through.
Sure. Well, the next question that I want to ask you is kind of a two-part question. And so let me ask you, and then you can fill it in. At 18 years old, you were sent home from Boston College, and it was on the front page of the Boston Globe. I would like to know what it is like going through this crisis in such a public way. I mean, you were known as fearless, this fearless player. What is it like to step out and have, the whole Boston Globe talking about your personal life?
For some reason, I was unaware of the social impact that it would have. I don't know why I didn't think it was newsworthy back then. I thought, I would transfer. I will not take the suspension at Boston College. I will not sit out for another year. I was still injured. And I thought I could run away from it and it would go away. Unfortunately, it didn't. And, to wake up and see a mom crying and I can only imagine. I have a 19-year-old daughter, and I can only imagine what it would be like as her dad to wake up tomorrow and for her to be on the front page of the Boston Globe sports page talking about my daughter's drug addiction.
Absolutely. Well, that brings to a question growing up in that era, would love Jerry Tarkanian, Tark the Shark. And so he recruited you at Fresno State and really gave you that second chance. But at 21 years old, you failed the drug test and you went to treatment. Why do you think at that point the treatment did not work?
It's a tough question. I can sit back in hindsight and say I wasn't ready to embrace it. I can say that the way it was laid out to me wasn't attractive. The mantra of living one day at a time at 21 is tough to embrace. There was still some things, inside of me that I wasn't willing to discuss at that age. And as I just stated, right, that when I was in college, my drug of choice was cocaine. And it wasn't like I was doing cocaine every day. It was periodically, it was occasionally. So I would go, 4, 6, 8 weeks saying, I feel great and I'm playing great and I feel phenomenal. And then I'd have that one night where I'd take the first drink and, cocaine had to be part of that night. It was part of the story.
Yes.
From 18 on, alcohol and cocaine, sadly was like peanut butter and jelly. I mean, they just went together for me. Although I know I needed treatment, I wasn't willing to completely give it up at that time.
Yes.
I'm a firm believer that God's timing is perfect. And I really think my expertise that you weren't done with your journey, and maybe today you wouldn't be able to help all the people you're helping if you hadn't finished your story.
Sure.
And I know people that they've sent their kids to treatment and they stay sober or clean for a few years and then they're back out and they're like, I wasted all that money and it was all for nothing. But I think you take away a little something from each treatment center. I think you build on it and it all comes together. So,
and I'd like to touch on that too. I don't think, and I see it today at my wellness center, right? We have anywhere between 16, 17 to, 22-year-olds, college seniors that come in. And, it's, that to plant the seed is important. And just because you go to treatment doesn't mean that, you're going to stay sober for the rest of your life, but the education you receive and some of the wisdom that you retain, is vital. And, my partying was never the same again after I left treatment. I always had, Salt Lake City, Utah, and that center in the back of my mind as I was getting ready to go out and do what I was doing.
kind of runs the fun.
Yes.
Are you done with your question?
Yes,
Is
I
it
am.
my turn?
Thanks.
Okay. So you went on to have an extraordinary basketball career. You were selected number 33 in the 99 NBA draft by the Denver Nuggets, and then you were traded to the Boston Celtics. The hometown hero returns. And I'm just amazed that you were able to compete so successfully high on drugs. And, I think you were so functional. I want to know what made you finally decide you had to stop?
So I look back on some of my pictures, and they're tough to look at. I look at some of my photos from my playing days with the Celtics, and I know exactly how I felt at that time. I was lost. I was lonely. It's really hard when you're playing at such a high level, or when you're successful at any level, and that one day it's going to go, that this is not sustainable, it's not going to last, and at any moment you're going to be exposed. And to wake up every day like that was challenging, to say the least, and frightening, to be quite frank. You know, playing for the Boston Celtics, as you touched on, you know, God, you know, has hit the perfect timing, and and excuse me, God's plan. You know, I believe that all those days in my parents' driveway, all those late nights playing on a spotlight in my backyard, you know, the 1 year that I played for the Boston Celtics has given me a platform to do what I do today. And, you know, so it's something that I look back on with regret, but also great gratitude.
You know, Chris, one thing, I know we have some new viewers today, and in case people have not read the book yet or seen the 30 on 30, could you tell us about that final, when you finally gave it up? Could you just tell us about that last night when you had to give it up and you went into treatment for good, so they'll hear your story?
Well, so there were a couple, right? So there was some, you know, in my 30s, I was pretty broken, you know, and I definitely had broken the spirit of not only myself, but everybody who loved me. And I was a daily vodka drinker. Vodka became my drug of choice. Vodka was the substance that put me out of my misery. It shut the noise off. It helped me forget the regret and the guilt and the shame that I was carrying around with me. And I woke up one day and put the kids on the school bus, and I walked up and I bought a couple of pints of vodka and I started drinking. And that day I got a phone call, and that phone call, it was about getting heroin. And I drove to my hometown and I shot some heroin on a side street. And immediately I felt that I was overdosing. I was really struggling with my breathing and I couldn't keep my eyes open, and it was happening very quickly. So I just started driving, and they found me a mile away, crashed into a cemetery. And the cemetery I crashed into, you know, I used to cut through it when I was a kid because it was in the same neighborhood that I grew up in. But, you know, I woke up in the ambulance and I was brought into a hospital, and thankfully there was a nurse who had remembered my mom, who was considered herself a family friend, a woman that I didn't know. I knew her husband because her husband used to go to all my basketball games. And she said it was her responsibility, that she wanted to help me, and that she felt my mom was talking to her and asking her to step in and do what my mom couldn't. And she did that. And she advocated for me, kept me in that hospital, and moved me to a local detox. And, you know, sadly, I sat in that detox feeling bad for myself. And it just so happened that that was the year the Boston Celtics were in the NBA Finals. So, you know, here I am in my hometown, watching the Boston Celtics achieve greatness and win another world championship. And at that moment, I was given a gift, right? I was given this opportunity by the Mullen family. Chris Mullen, who played in the NBA for a long time, who's in recovery, and his wife offered me an opportunity to go to treatment in New York. And, you know, today I am who I am because of that, right? Their giving spirit, you know, the selfless act that they did that day, the impact it's had on me is tremendous. And all the kids I've presented in front of, you know, is because of them. And they gave that to me. I went away to treatment, and 40 days into treatment, I went home for the birth of my youngest son, Drew. You know, when I had overdosed that day, my wife was 8 months pregnant. And unfortunately, I relapsed. You know, I look back on that time and, you know, as a dad standing in the delivery room and sitting in the room with my wife after, you know, holding this little miracle, you know, I just felt so worthless. You know, I knew that I really had nothing to offer my wife or my children. I had no job, no money, and all I had done over the last 8 years is take from them, and put us in a position where, you know, we went from playing professional basketball together as a family to food stamps. But I went back to treatment. My wife gave me an ultimatum, and I went back to treatment, and a counselor suggested that I play dead for my family, that I was no good for them, that they were better off without me, and my wife should sit my children down and explain to them that their father died in a car accident. I walked out of that office that day, and it was the first time I heard someone say that out loud to me. It was something that I thought about often, that, you know, my family would be much better off without me, that my wife deserved to meet someone who would care for her and love her and not disrupt her life and have her live in this world around addiction, and that my children deserved a better dad. And, you know, I walked back to my room that night after that counselor told me that in tears, and I hit my knees and I started praying. You know, my mom died at 52 years old from lung cancer, and she had never smoked a cigarette. And my mom left me her spirituality, her faith. And, you know, she taught me what it's like, or how to pray for others as a child. I watched her pray when an ambulance drove by, when police cars passed us. My mom taught me how to light candles for others. And I leaned on that, and I went back to my room and I prayed for it. And, you know, I've been sober since. So, you know, it's the greatest accomplishment of my life. It's the greatest gift I could ever give to myself and to the people who love me. You know, recovery, because of that day, which would be considered a horrible day in any life, that day has become one of the best days of my life.
That's amazing. And, you know, they always say it's hard to fall when you're on your knees. And I love that you hit your knees, because so many people time and time again do that, and it works.
Thank you for sharing that part of the story with us. When it comes to drug addiction, most people focus on the worst day, but you go deeper about that. You talk about the first day. Can you explain what that is, the first day?
You know, I just think, you know, for so many years, you know, it was, whether it's Nancy Reagan, this is your brain on drugs, or the mug shots or the commercials of meth addicts. And we were just sending a message that kids couldn't identify with. And I was part of that. I was playing into the stigma when I was traveling around the country speaking. I believe that, you know, do kids need to hear stories like mine? Yes, I do. I do believe that. But they also need to understand where this begins, and they need to know how it begins and why it begins. And oftentimes, you know, you walk through school hallways and I see pictures of the worst day, and I see the posters they put up, and it depicts this, you know, traumatic story. But they don't talk about the beginning, and they don't talk about, you know, the reason why this all started. And I think that anyone who suffered from addiction, you know, that that the beginning is relevant, and I think kids can identify with the first day rather than the worst day.
Um, and that, we talk about too, parents being in denial or just not understanding it. And I know they'll think, oh, my kid can't have a problem. He's on the dean's list, or, they have a great job. They get up and they go to work every day, and they wouldn't be able to do that if they really had a problem. And I remember in Carpool middle school, there was a boy that committed suicide at Highland Park, and I was driving the middle school boys, and one of the kids said, why would he kill himself? He was on the A team in football. And that just was like a gut punch. But what would you say to parents, about their children, about watching out for problems?
I think parents they're so focused on, I think Monday through Friday, right? I think Monday through Friday, it's, all hands on deck. We're going to help you with your homework. We'll email your teachers. We'll find extra credit. We'll set you up for SAT courses. We'll be in the bleachers at your games. But parents kind of fade away on Fridays and Saturday nights. And that's when our kids need their parents the most.
Sure.
Parents hover over homework and probably embarrass their children at their sporting events. But on Fridays and Saturday nights, they pull away. And some parents, and I'm talking to the parents that have the ability to be present, that there's no reason to pull away. Unfortunately, some kids don't even have that parental oversight and care in their life.
Do you think it's the focus on achievement and grades and sports success, and not maybe enough on emotional well-being and mental health? Or
Absolutely. Listen, I don't, I'm very proud that my daughter went to prom without getting drunk. That to me, that's something I never achieved.
Me either.
So, it's we focus so little on that, and we don't talk about it enough. So, and that's where we've dropped the ball with our children, just, in the education piece, that we have them captive for 13 years, but, wellness is still not a core class in our school system. I don't understand, especially now. I did an interview earlier today. What is it going to be like for some of these children when they re-enter school after this pandemic? School for some children is their safe spot.
Yes.
It's a place where they can escape the chaos. And there's kids out there right now that have not been able to escape the chaos for 8 months. So I just hope that, the wellness is a focus, and mental health is a focus when kids re-enter school. And I don't know what it's like at Highland Park or the surrounding high schools, but I can't tell you how many high schools I speak at where, they have 3,000 students, but 6 guidance counselors.
Yes.
How are those numbers appropriate?
Sure. Well, Chris, one of the things that you have done so much, and giving back of your time and working with people and helping people, do you believe that the work that you are doing helps keep you sober? Does that help inspire you and keep you sober daily?
Do I think it keeps me sober? I think it's a part of what keeps me sober. I do. I'm not naive enough to know. I'm experienced enough to know, I should say, that helping others is not the only aspect to staying sober. I was fortunate enough to sit in the rooms with some beautiful men and women who gave me the principles around recovery, who showed me the steps that were necessary. and helping others is a part of it. Service work, without a doubt, is a huge part of staying sober, but it's not the only part. And I've seen a lot of people who care for others, who give back, who work in this space. They lose themselves, and that awareness for me is fortunately very present. I have to help myself. I have to stay in touch with people who have helped me throughout this whole process, and stay engaged and close to recovery, because without it, I lose it all.
Well, I'm curious. Every year, right before my AA birthday, sometime that month, I'll have a drunk dream, and I'll dream that I'm drinking, and I've kind of been drinking all along and not telling any. And I'll wake up, and it's this nightmare. And I'm wondering if you ever have nightmares that you're using again.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Aren't they the worst? They're awful.
Yeah. For probably 15 seconds, your whole world just fell apart. As soon as you open your eyes, you think everything is gone. And thankfully it was just a dream.
And it's the last time I drank, I woke up and I thought, oh, I had the worst nightmare, but it wasn't a nightmare, and all that stuff had actually happened. And then I got help the next day, but now it really is a dream. So that's great.
Yes. Well, Chris, we appreciate all of the different things that you're doing. And one of the things that we would like to hear from you, we'd like to hear a little bit about Heron Wellness and the Heron Project. So could you give us a little update on some of the things that you were doing at Heron Wellness and the project?
Yeah, sure. Heron Wellness was a dream of mine. Probably since the 5-year sober mark, I had this vision of opening up, a center to help others and be part of their journey. On my 10-year anniversary, I was able to do that. For me, I think there are so many aspects to early recovery that are ignored. And I think people who have been in this treatment space have gotten away with too much. And I wanted to offer everything. I wanted to, I wanted to be, that center that provides all the services that we say we provide. And, there's multiple paths to recovery. And I believe that there's ways that you can be more successful in recovery if some practices are implemented early on. And, at Heron Wellness, there's yoga every morning. There's a yoga instructor, there's meditation, guided meditation. There's massage therapy twice a week, acupuncture 3 days a week, hyperbaric chamber, as well as vitamin infusions and life coaching and personal trainer on a daily basis. So it's all these practices and holistic practices that I believe that support people early. I think if people wake up and they can get grounded and meditate and do yoga, and I think their day tends to go a little differently. I think if they're in the gym sweating and those endorphins are firing, they feel better about themselves. And, in the afternoon, to settle down with some acupuncture and massage therapy.
I think Jan and I need to come check it out so that we can promote it better. We need to, maybe get away.
Yes. Well, congratulations on opening Heron Wellness. And one of the things also, I believe August 1st, you celebrated 12 years of sobriety. Congratulations. Happy birthday, a couple of months late, but we're very proud of your sobriety.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And, Heron Project too, it's a foundation that I started a few years ago, 10 years ago, roughly. And, we've assisted thousands and thousands of families.
Is there a way to donate to it?
Yeah, heronproject.org. And, the thing is, we have runners from all over the world that support the Heron Project, and to watch the growth over the years, and my childhood best friend Kevin Michael Isaac, who's in the book, he runs my foundation. He's the one who introduced me to sobriety, who took care of me and mentored me early on. And we have we established ourselves very early on in COVID with online support groups and family support groups, and we have hundreds of meetings a week. Something that I'm very proud of, and but before we end this, tennis.
Yes, we're gonna get a match set up with you when you come to talk at Highland Park. We
No,
got
no
it.
doubt.
We're there.
I'm ready.
So what made you decide to take up tennis all of a sudden?
Well, tennis, we have a tennis court at Heron Wellness in Massachusetts, as well as Heron Wellness in Virginia. And we had some very competitive athletes that have come through that program that were on the tennis court. And I fell in love with it. I fell in love with doubles.
Okay.
We love doubles.
I'm not a fan of singles. I'm a huge fan of doubles. But, it's something that I fell in love with. The competitiveness, the strategy, the team aspect of it.
Jan and I had a competitive match, and we were warming up, and I hit her in the head with the ball, and we had to forfeit our match because she had ringing in her ears that wouldn't go away.
Well, I think, and if I remember correctly, right, that when we were on that drive, I think
Yes.
I saw your tennis shoes, and they were all black.
Yeah,
Yes.
she's a badass.
I am known for those black tennis shoes because I
see
look
that?
down and I see those black tennis shoes, and it just makes me think I am tough. And my husband even teases me. He says I walk differently when I'm wearing those black tennis shoes. And so,
You're
yes.
like Mike Tyson of tennis.
And then you
Yes.
just yell yours when the ball
That's right.
comes, and Jan runs for it. It's awesome.
I do need to tell you one funny, because Robin and I will want to play tennis with you one day. But Robin and I are fairly competitive, but Robin would sometimes think about things that were going on outside of our tennis court. And so I was serving for us to win the match, and she's hollering a couple of courts over saying, "Who's winning? What's your score?" And I looked at Robin and I said, "Robin, let's focus on our match. And she looked at me, and what was it you said to me, Robin?
You're not the boss of me.
So she, at that time, told me just to shut up. I was not the boss of her.
Yeah.
We managed to pull it together and won the match, but we are very competitive, and we would like to play against you when you come
Except
to
for
Dallas.
warning, I've been to the hospital 3 times with Jan from tennis matches. She's had
Jan?
heat stroke. She's fallen and hit on her head, and then she had like a little mini stroke. I mean, seriously, 3 times. ICU, everything.
So well, we look forward to seeing you and playing tennis with you. And I think what we need to think about doing is maybe doing a tennis tournament in Dallas for the Heron
Heron,
Project.
yes, we'd love
We
that.
have some contacts. I think we can put together a great tennis tournament,
We're
and it
going to
would
try
be a
to
lot of
get
fun.
John Isner to come serve to you and see if you can return it.
Well, you know something? I was at University of Georgia, where I believe Isner went.
Yes, he did go to Georgia.
Right. And I was speaking to Georgia Tennis, and I went on the tennis court, and I had some of their players fire serves at me. And I had a complete, a different respect for that level of athlete in that sport. I don't understand how they can get their racket back and return when the ball's coming that quickly.
Yes.
But it's a great sport. It's, I don't play basketball, but I will play tennis. And at Heron Wellness, it's tough to get on the court. I mean, everybody loves it there.
Great.
Great.
Well, before we close, we would like to say that we have so much admiration for you and Heather. We really,
she's my hero for sure. For sure.
yes, and we love the book Basketball Junkie. Thank you. I'm very proud. I have my signed copy. Thank goodness you signed this book before I took you to the airport, or I would never live it down. But that and
I have our pictures too in my book. I keep my different
Yes.
things. Okay. Well, and before we run out of time, I want to give a quick plug. The 24-Hour Club is a treatment center that helps the homeless or people that don't have the funds to pay. And they have a cookbook, and all the chefs from Dallas, the top chefs, have recipes in it. It's called Cooking at Home, and you can get it at, I think, Dallas24hourclub.org. You can order it, and all the profits go to the 2-4 Club. And then also, Jan and I are looking for sponsors for our next book club. For $500, you can have your logo, and we'll plug your treatment center, your company, your book club, whatever it is. And our first one, I think over 700 people had watched.
Yes.
So, hopefully, I bet more people watch this one too, because we're getting some momentum. But anyway, just let us know if you want to sponsor future book club.
Yes. And also the last thing before we close, we have a couple of thank yous. And thank you, Chris and Jenny. Thank you for working with us. And we also want to thank Taylor Stenstrud. He is the one behind the scenes that keeps us going. And it is a pleasure to work with On Air Media. We have worked with them a couple of times, and Jason and Melissa are wonderful. And so we just want to do a special shout out and a thank you to them.
And as a reminder, if you want to donate to the Heron Project, what was it?
Yes.
The heronproject.org, I believe.
Yes, heronproject.org, and we will put up on the screen different ways that we can follow you, Chris. You can follow Chris Herren, and we have your Facebook, your Twitter, and your Instagram.
And as a last thing, too, we talked about one of the ways to stay sober is to help others, and there are so many areas in Dallas that you can give back. If you follow Dallas Doing Good, they have all kinds of nonprofits and the work they're doing. There's the 24-Hour Club, there's Nexus, Recovery Resource Care, Genesis, Magdalene House, Maggie's House, so many. So call Jan or I if you need something to do. We can hook you up.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you again. Bye, Chris.
Thank you. Bye.
It was fun seeing you, and we look forward to seeing you soon. We really
It was
appreciate
great
you
seeing
joining
as
us.
well. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all for
right.
being with us today.
Take-